on that side is why this has been the most unproductive Congress. People all over X and everything is like, well, they don't deserve anything. They're so unproductive. Let me tell you, the people that y'all keep putting in charge are the reason that we are unproductive.
One reckless policy could unravel decades of global alliances, reshaping the world order in ways you won't believe. Jasmine Crockett reveals a shadow president pulling Congress's strings, paralyzing the nation. It's not just Washington's mess. Misguided tariffs and foreign policy blunders are pushing allies like Canada and Mexico toward China. The world's chessboard is shifting, and America might not be the one calling the moves. The United States stands at a crossroads, its once steady course now thrown into chaos by a storm of political dysfunction. Jasmine Crockett, a fearless voice in Congress, has sounded the alarm, exposing a system crippled by incompetence, division, and shadowy influences. Her words are a lightning bolt. The people y'all keep putting in charge are the reason we are unproductive. This isn't just a domestic crisis, it's a global warning. The world watches as America, a titan of democracy, falters, sending shockwaves through alliances and emboldening adversaries. Imagine a lighthouse keeper who's abandoned their post, leaving ships, nations, adrift in the dark. Crockett's critique reveals a Congress paralyzed by leaders who lack the will to govern, swayed by a figure like Donald Trump, who, though no longer president, operates as a shadow puppeteer. This dysfunction has consequences far beyond Washington. Allies like Canada and Mexico question America's reliability, while rivals like Russia and China seize the moment to expand their influence. This video dives deep into the heart of America's turmoil, analyzing how internal failures fuel global instability. We'll explore the latest statistics, including a 60% recession risk flagged by JP Morgan, and dissect policies like tariffs that have strained relations with neighbors. The metaphor is clear. The world is a chessboard, and every misstep by the US shifts the balance toward chaos. Crockett's call for accountability isn't just for Americans. It's a plea to restore trust before the storm engulfs us all. By the end, you'll see why this moment demands action, not apathy, to steer the ship back to safety. The US Congress is a hollow shell, the least productive in modern history, and Jasmine Crockett's indictment is unrelenting. They don't understand how to govern, and they don't even have a will to govern. Her words paint a vivid picture of a legislative body not merely failing, but actively obstructing progress, led by figures who prioritize loyalty to a shadow figure, Donald Trump, over the needs of the nation. Imagine a ship's crew mutinying against their captain, refusing to sail while the vessel drifts toward jagged rocks. This is Congress today, a body entrusted with steering the nation but choosing instead to let it founder. The statistics are stark. In 2023, Congress passed just 27 substantive bills, a record low compared to an average of 300 annually in the 1990s, according to the Congressional Research Service. Budget resolutions stall, infrastructure projects languish, and critical issues like climate change and healthcare reform are buried under partisan bickering. Crockett's accusation of a shadow president points directly at Trump, who, despite holding no elected office, exerts outsized influence through loyalists in Congress. His directives, amplified via social media and echoed by figures like Marjorie Taylor Greene, have turned governance into a theater of obstruction where spectacle trumps substance. This paralysis has domestic roots but global consequences. The U.S.'s inability to pass a coherent budget has delayed $10 billion in promised aid to allies like Ukraine, per the State Department, weakening collective defense against Russian aggression. Allies like Canada and the European Union, reliant on U.S. leadership, are forced to pivot. Canada has increased its own infrastructure spending by 10.8% since 2023, per Statistics Canada, to offset U.S. inaction on cross-border projects. The EU, meanwhile, has boosted defense budgets by 10%, according to NATO reports, signaling distrust in America's commitment to collective security. Crockett's metaphor of a shadow president resonates on the world stage. Picture a rogue general issuing orders from the shadows, sowing confusion among troops. Trump's influence undermines democratic institutions, sending a signal to authoritarian regimes like North Korea and Iran that the U.S. is too fractured to respond cohesively. In 2024, Iran's cyber attacks on U.S. infrastructure rose 20%, per cybersecurity ventures, exploiting America's distraction. In Eastern Europe, Russia has tested NATO's resolve, with 30% more border incursions since 2023, according to the European External Action Service. The human toll of this dysfunction is palpable. In the US, 1 in 4 families report delayed medical care due to stalled healthcare reforms, per a 2024 Kaiser Family Foundation survey. Globally, the US's failure to lead on climate initiatives has left vulnerable nations like Bangladesh facing $5 billion in flood-related damages in 2024, per the World Bank. Crockett's critique isn't just about incompetence, it's about betrayal. She accuses leaders of intentionally doing nothing, a charge that echoes in capitals from Ottawa to Brussels. The global chessboard reflects this chaos. China has capitalized on U.S. inaction, securing $20 billion in African infrastructure deals in 2024, per the African Development Bank, while Russia's propaganda campaigns have surged 25% in Eastern Europe, per the EU's Disinfo Lab. The world sees a superpower distracted, and the balance tips toward those who act decisively. Crockett's rallying cry, "Stand up, speak up, act up," is a demand for leaders to reclaim the helm. Without action, the ship of state risks not just drifting but sinking, dragging allies and global stability into the abyss. Trump's tariff policies are a wrecking ball to the global economy, and Jasmine Crockett's critique is merciless. These decisions are not just incompetent, but elitist, designed to shield the wealthy while crushing the working class. Echoing analysts like Jim Cramer, she calls out a fantasy of economic nationalism that ignores the interconnected reality of global trade. Imagine a farmer torching his fields to protest low prices. Tariffs are that self-destructive, burning the very foundations they claim to protect. Crockett's charge is clear. These policies betray the people they purport to serve. The data paints a grim picture. J.P. Morgan raised U.S. recession odds to 60% in 2024, citing tariffs as a primary driver per their economic outlook. Trump's 20% tariffs on imports have fueled inflation, with consumer prices rising 4.8% year over year, the highest since 2008, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. American households face a 25% spike in grocery costs since 2022, with staples like bread and milk outpacing stagnant wages. The S&P 500 plummeted 10% since the latest tariff announcements, matching the worst market declines since George W. Bush's 2001 crash, per Bloomberg. This isn't economic strength, it's sabotage. The global fallout is catastrophic. Canada and Mexico, cornerstones of North American trade, have retaliated with surgical precision. Canada's 15% counter tariffs on U.S. dairy and lumber have cost American farmers $2.5 billion in exports since 2023, per the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Mexico's restrictions on U.S. auto parts have idled factories in Michigan and Ohio, with 400,000 jobs lost in 2024, according to the Economic Policy Institute. These trade wars have turned allies into adversaries, with Canada exploring trade pacts with the EU and China to offset U.S. unreliability. Crockett's analysis cuts deeper. Tariffs are a betrayal of the working class. They enrich corporate elites who dodge the fallout while ordinary citizens face soaring costs. The metaphor is vivid. Trump is a landlord raising rent during a flood, profiting as tenants drown. Allies see this as a breach of trust. Canada's Prime Minister has publicly criticized U.S. policies, with 68% of Canadians expressing distrust in U.S. leadership, per a 2024 Pew Research poll. Mexico has deepened ties with China, with Chinese investments in infrastructure rising 35% since 2023, per Mexico's Ministry of Economy. The Western Hemisphere, once a model of cooperation, is fracturing into a battleground of mistrust. Adversaries exploit this chaos. China has positioned itself as a stabilizing trade partner, securing $61 billion in Latin American contracts in 2024, per the World Bank. Its Belt and Road Initiative has filled the void left by U.S. retreat, offering infrastructure deals to nations alienated by tariffs. Russia, meanwhile, has benefited indirectly, with its oil exports to Asia rising 15% as U.S. trade disruptions redirect global energy flows, per the International Energy Agency. The US is losing its economic leverage, and the global chessboard reflects it. Allies retreat, rivals advance, and America's credibility erodes. The human cost is staggering. In the US, 1 in 5 small businesses report reduced hiring due to tariff-driven cost increases, per the National Federation of Independent Business. Globally, 100,000 jobs have been lost in allied nations, from Canadian lumberjacks to Mexican auto workers, per the International Labor Organization. Crockett's warning is urgent. These policies aren't just failures, they're a blueprint for decline. The world watches as America's economic missteps ripple outward, destabilizing markets and livelihoods. Without a course correction, the damage will be irreversible. The U.S.'s foreign policy is a house of cards, collapsing under contradictions and hubris. Jasmine Crockett's piercing question, are we rejecting allies like Canada and Mexico while embracing Putin, exposes a dangerous pivot that threatens the global order. The U.S. is alienating democratic partners while flirting with authoritarian regimes, creating a vacuum that rivals eagerly fill. This isn't just a policy failure, it's a betrayal of the principles America once championed. The statistics are alarming. Domestic extremist groups account for 80% of violent crimes in the U.S., per FBI data, yet foreign threats dominate policy debates, distracting from Russia's influence campaigns, which surged 40% since 2022, according to the Department of Homeland Security. Trump's praise for Putin and criticism of NATO allies has fractured the alliance. Germany and France increased defense budgets by 20% in 2024 per NATO, signaling they no longer trust U.S. leadership. This isn't diplomacy, it's abandonment. The metaphor is chilling. America is a general who's deserted the battlefield, leaving allies to fend for themselves. Canada, once a brother in arms, now views the U.S. with skepticism, particularly after Trump's outlandish suggestion to annex it as a 51st state. Public opinion in Canada shows 60% distrust in U.S. leadership, per a 2024 Pew Research poll. Mexico, battered by trade wars, has pivoted to China, with Chinese investments in infrastructure rising 35% since 2023, per Mexico's Ministry of Economy. These scarce resources and diplomatic tensions have pushed Mexico to seek alternative partners, with China's $3 billion investment in Mexican ports in 2024, per Mexico's National Institute of Statistics, signaling a shift in regional influence. Adversaries thrive in this chaos. China's Belt and Road Initiative has secured $15 billion in new Latin American projects in 2024, per the Asian Development Bank, while Russia's propaganda fuels anti-American sentiment in Eastern Europe, with a 30% rise in disinformation campaigns, per the EU's Disinfo Lab. The US's distraction empowers rivals to redraw the global map. In Asia, Japan, and South Korea, wary of US unreliability, have deepened their own defense pacts, investing $10 billion in joint military exercises in 2024, per Japan's Ministry of Defense. NATO's cohesion is at its weakest since the Cold War, with Turkey and Hungary aligning closer to Russia, undermining collective security. Crockett's critique, a nation that can't govern itself can't lead the world, is a stark truth. The US risks becoming a bystander in a world it once shaped. The ripple effects are global. In Africa, China's $20 billion in infrastructure loans in 2024, per the African Development Bank, fill the void left by US retreat. In the Middle East, Iran's 20% increase in cyber attacks on US infrastructure, per Cybersecurity Ventures, exploits America's distraction. Allies and adversaries alike see a superpower adrift, and the chessboard tilts toward those who act decisively. Crockett's call for action is urgent. Restore alliances, reject authoritarian flirtations, or watch the global order collapse. The metaphor is a lighthouse dimmed by neglect. Without fuel, it cannot guide ships to safety. The US must rebuild trust with allies like Canada and Mexico, whose cooperation is vital to countering China and Russia. Failure to act will cement America's decline, leaving the world to navigate a storm without its guiding light. Jasmine Crockett's voice is a beacon in a world shrouded in fog. Her demand for accountability isn't just a critique, it's a blueprint for survival. The US must govern with competence, rebuild trust with allies, and reject the chaos of shadow influences. The alternative is a global order where adversaries dictate terms and allies turn away. The statistics are a clarion call. A 60% recession risk, 10% market drops, and 120,000 jobs lost globally are warnings of a tipping point. The chessboard is shifting, and the U.S. risks checkmate without decisive action. Crockett's challenge, stand up, speak up, act up, is for every citizen, leader, and nation watching. America is a lighthouse, its beam dimmed but not extinguished. By embracing accountability and unity, it can shine again, guiding allies and deterring foes. The world needs a strong, principled America, not a shadow of its potential.